Well, thank you for coming, everyone, and thanks to a few of you for listening to Steve and I chit chat about our gardens while we wait for the go time. We talk about that a lot. So we are gathered here today to go through brand brilliance. We're going to take you through real world examples of business growth through branding. And I'm just really excited to dive into the material. So we have a slide deck here with lots of real world examples, and we'll take you through it. And there's lots of opportunity for you all to add to the chat as we go along. And I encourage you to be present and close your other tabs and all that good stuff. Take notes if you like, but we will be sending a recording after the session. So let's see if I can share my screen, do some introductions. So here we are, Brand Brilliance. And I am going to start by introducing myself, and then I will introduce my lovely co-host, Steve.
Well, lovely.
Perfect. This is back when Steve and I had more of the same haircut going on. Things are different now, as you can see. But I am Becca Brown. I'm the founder and CEO of Uppercase Industries, and we are a consumer insights and marketing strategy company. Also joined here today by Uppercase team members, Mallory and Dave, who you'll see in the chat. Hi, Mallory and Dave. And at Uppercase, we help clients cultivate an intimate knowledge of their customers in a short amount of time and use what we learn to craft strategies that really work. We think we're great at what we do because we are really driven by genuine curiosity for humankind. So if you ever meet me in person, I'll probably ask you lots of questions. And I'm also a Vermonter. I think I had a chance to see a few of you last night at a great summit event here in Vermont. So that was fun. And I know some other folks are from farther afield. I'm an obsessive cook. So I think all of our case studies are in the food world here. That's a passion that Steve and I share. I'm also a mom to two cuties and one very large dog, as you can see here. She's pretty much bigger than I am. That's Lola. And Steve is my co-host. We've had the chance to work together on several client projects, and it's been really fun to partner on those, as well as a couple of workshops we've done. Steve, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, sure. So a lot of parallels between Becca and I. Love of food, married, 2 kids, each have a dog. We garden, so many things in common. I operate and own rival brands, and it's my self-titled studio. I work as a graphic designer, but also work as a brand strategist. So people can come to me that own or market a business, and they can come to me with any number of problems that they have. Through brand strategy, I put together a series of initiatives to kind of help them take them through those problems and come up with some solutions that then get expressed through design as the souvenir of our work together. So pretty simply put, but that's the nuts and bolts of what we do.
Awesome. Thank you. And thanks for being my co-host today.
Yeah.
Everyone on the chat, we would love you all to introduce yourselves as well. And what we'd love to hear is where you're coming from. So where in the world are you joining from? What your business name and what it does. And then if you have any big kind of audacious goals that you're working towards in your business, feel free to share those as well. So we'll just give a second for that. And then while you all are introducing yourselves, I am going to take you through, actually, these are backwards. So first, I'm going to take you through this framework to kind of give you a little visual. This is actually a really nice visual of how Steve and I work with clients. And if you've been on any of my sessions before, you probably have seen this diagram. I love to talk through it. So I kind of live in the dark blue circle over here in customer, and these pieces are all the pieces that you need in your business to allow it to grow. You want to be living in this intersection of the Venn diagram. So really, you all have kind of covered the orange circle. You found the opportunity, you've created the product, you've brought it to market maybe. And now Steve and I are coming in with the blue and green circles here. So what we do in our work together is make sure that we're getting this part, what the customer cares about, to align with what your brand is, what you really care about, and make sure that that's articulated in the right way. Anything to add there, Steve?
No, that there's another Venn diagram that I'll sort of talk about. It's almost like if you took a magnifying glass to the brand circle, there's sort of like another Venn diagram that kind of just gets a little bit more granular into the sort of the parts and pieces of the work that I do, and also the part where you come in, and it just provides a little bit more granularity and explanation about, like, because brand can be so kind of confusing and such a huge umbrella. So I just try to break it down a little bit further.
That's great. Yeah, I agree that that's that's a circle in particular that kind of needs that double click and the zoom in.
Right, right.
Awesome. Well, I just want to read a few of these intros on the chat here. We have Christine from Redhead Media. Hi, Christine. It was nice to see you last night. Sanchita from Living Low Carb. Cool. Based in San Francisco. I love to have both coasts represented. Sarah from Clean Slate, Vermont. So we have a professional home organizer. By the way, one reason I like to read these out loud is because when you have the recording, you can't see the chat. So there's actually a practical purpose other than me being excited about all the cool things that you do. We have Sass from Adventure Dinner. I had a Adventure Dinner birthday party last year. Highly recommend. Shout out to Sass and her team. Kelly Small from Burst, working on a brand and a product expansion for Q4. That's exciting. Jen, hi Jen, founder of Meristem Farms, women-owned hemp-derived CBD. That's exciting. Maurizio from LA, co-owner of Nowhere Bakery. I love a baked good. Thanks, Maurizio, for joining. And then we have Julie Kelly, strategic comms for businesses in transition, 20 years in TV news. Wow, this is a talented group. Thanks for introducing yourselves. Those of you who did, and everyone who hasn't yet, please do so. There can actually be great networking in the chat. You'd be surprised. So I'm going to take us through to the next step. We are going to cover 4 main business phases. And I was thinking about this morning, and it's, you know, I think this is a beautiful slide. It's very clear and laid out, but I actually almost think of these phases as another circle because, and I don't want everyone to think like, if you're not a brand new business, you're not in launch, right? And you don't have to be like a $50 million company to get to revitalize. Sometimes that's how it goes, but really, you know, you might go through all 4 of these phases in the first 2 years of your business. So you can kind of go, you can skip around, you can cycle around, but you will be in one of these 4 phases probably right now. So they are launch, which is pretty straightforward, setting your brand up or a new product up to compete in the marketplace. Renew, which is updating your brand for the future, you know, based on maybe a market change or a change in ownership or other changes that you need to adapt. Pivot, so renew is an update. Pivot is really a, you know, a right-hand turn towards a totally new strategy and a new way forward. And then revitalize. So that's usually when you've been in the world for a little while and it's time to regain some relevance and competitiveness. And we'd love to hear in the chat which phase you see yourself in. There's really no right answer. You might be in one phase today and one phase tomorrow, but we'd love to hear kind of which ones people are grappling with. And Steve, anything to add there on these 4?
Yeah, no, I mean, these are just sort of 4 common, like sort of like the larger inflection points as businesses grow and or find themselves at different phases of growth. I mean, there are certainly different other sort of more subtle or nuanced phases of growth or conditions that you might not need to lean on a brand strategy or branding to navigate. But these are just sort of the 4 that probably a lot of people can see themselves in or may eventually see themselves in.
Totally, that's great. And I see Jen chiming in from Meristem. And I think this is, and also Sarah, a few folks are saying 2 of the phases. And I think, you know, for Meristem, Revitalize, it's a brand that's been out for a little while, and then you have an individual product that you're launching. So that makes absolute sense. I mean, sometimes as business owners, we've got to wrap our heads around more than one phase at once and figure it out. So great to hear. Okay, So I'm going to go right into our case studies. I have the first two and Steve has the second two. And we did include kind of a lot of text on these slides, which usually in a live session, I wouldn't include so much, but we wanted to do that so that you have the details in case you want to go back and reference them. So just so you know, I'm not going to read every single word, but we'll give you the idea. And let's see, I don't think, sometimes my friends from Wildgood come to these sessions, but I don't see Amy and Shay here. So I was curious about that. So Wildgood is an amazing olive oil based ice cream. So non-dairy ice cream. It launched in, I think, 2021. And in the lead up to that, we did a really fun project with them. So here's where we were at. This was, and so we have some fun stats for each of the case studies. So you can kind of, maybe compare in your head where your business is with what this one was like. This was a small team. They didn't have revenue yet because they were pre-launch. They were sort of a medium level of, this wasn't like Goldman Sachs is investing in this brand, but they did have a little bit of seed investment to get started. So they were able to use that wisely. And they asked for our help with the brand's launch. So it was a really interesting situation because their new dessert was super innovative and they had this, and still do have, a crazy olive oil emulsification process that they use to create this incredible ice cream. It's available in Vermont and across the country. You should try it. And it was a healthy alternative to dairy desserts. So they were really excited about olive oil as this front and center ingredient, and they wanted to feature it. They also had a lot of other components to their brand that they wanted to figure out kind of what the hierarchy was. So this brand was founded in Greece. Founded in Greece and Vermont. So they were kind of like, okay, are we a Vermont company? Are we a Greek company? Are we a global company? We don't know. And then they had the olive oil piece. They have amazing, unique flavors. And so they really had all of this exciting information that could potentially get into the brand, but they didn't know what to lead with. And, if you went out the gate with 10 different points of difference, that's just confusing for your audience. So question for you all, as we go through this example, does anyone here ever have a hard time deciding what parts of your brand to highlight? You can just share yes or no in the chat. So some questions we were grappling with were, what level of appeal does olive oil have in the frozen desserts category, right? Like, is this a yum factor or a yuck factor for people? We weren't sure. And so what else are consumers looking for in frozen desserts in general? Are we going to have an opportunity to convert a traditional dairy ice cream lover into the plant-based category, or do we need to go after current plant-based ice cream eaters and steal them from our competitors, essentially? And then what label signifiers do folks want in a frozen dessert? What are those things on the package that are going to catch their eye and get them to put it in their cart? So those are a few questions we went in to answer. In terms of the next steps that we took, and so for each of these case studies, you'll see we have situation, action, result to take you through kind of what was happening, the steps that we took to help the client, and the result that we saw. And I see the chat, lots of people are saying yes to having lots of things to decide on in terms of what to highlight. And this is something that so many clients grapple with, and we I think both Steve and I pride ourselves on being the filter and the figure outers of what the brand message hierarchy could be. That's one of my favorite things to do. So, Wildgood knew they needed to gain a lot of focus, and they also had the freedom to define themselves, but which way to go? So we set up a plan to go out and talk to people to uncover their needs, wants, and preferences. And you'll say this, you hear me say this a lot, but when you're faced with a difficult question and not sure which way to go, I find it almost always helps to go ask your audience. That doesn't mean that you're relying on them for every business decision. You still need to make that final call, but the input can really just either clarify the path that you're on or kind of reveal a new path that maybe you haven't thought of. So what we did was we conducted a wide variety of research here. We did surveys, we did packaging tests, we hosted focus groups, and then we highlighted the key data and distilled it into insights and recommendation. So here's a little bit of what that looked like. We actually first crafted a target consumer profile because we realized we could sell this ice cream to any number of people, but and so you see this is number two. We picked three potential target markets. We honed in on number two for a lot of reasons. So things we look at are there enough humans in our selling region to make this a good target? Can they afford our product? Is this a growing industry? And does what this in this case urban millennials, what this group wants, does it align with what we're offering? And then we took that to put together a simple, clear brand positioning that guided the launch. So we landed on kind of a description of what Wild Good is, where it is, and who it's for. And that led to a really successful launch for the brand and some double-digit growth in the years afterwards. So but the pitfall I want to call out here is sometimes there's a mismatch between what the founder thinks is appealing and what the audience thinks is appealing. And this happens over and over again. In this case, the Wild Good team was really excited about olive oil, and it was so new that it sort of seemed like we have to talk about this, but it didn't move people to buy. So we kind of avoided that pitfall in the launch by doing this research, and were able to let them move forward with what did move people to buy, which is basically flavor, taste, and I would also say indulgence, and having indulgence within a plant-based, healthier ice cream. That ended up being kind of the feature that set them apart. So that's that one. Any questions there? Let's see, Steve weighing in here. Totally agree on that. It can be hard to decide what to lead with, and not everything can be equally important. That happens a lot.
And Becca and I were just in a PEM survey for a client that we're sharing right now. And as a group, we had a kind of a packaging favorite that we thought everyone would love. And it wound up being the one that everyone hated. So sometimes the learnings can be tantamount to success.
Yeah, that was so revealing.
Right?
Love hearing from people in that live setting. Oh, Q&A. Okay. Where is that? Sorry, sometimes Zoom doesn't agree with what I'm trying to do. Oh, here it is. Sorry. Okay, getting to the next case study. This is Oak Knoll Dairy. We're basically doing a tour of the grocery store here today. Right. Which I love. Actually, Stephen and I have talked about this a lot. We love grocery shopping because we get to visit all our friends at the grocery store. So this is Oak Knoll Dairy, and it's an amazing company. It's a goat milk. And so they came to us, and this was a Steve client that he brought me in on, which was really fun. So they wanted Oak Knoll was purchased by Jasper Hill. And in order to really make that a successful acquisition and kind of bring them into the family on solid footing, they wanted to make sure they updated the brand and led them into a successful expansion phase. So they wanted a greater understanding of their core audience and to learn how to appeal to people who are unfamiliar with or never tried goat's milk. And personally, before I did this project, I had never tried goat's milk either. So I learned a ton about this industry. But it was also a really good example of a case where sometimes you have a niche product and you're really excited about it. You're sort of living and breathing it all day, but most of your buyers are people who have never even tried this product before. So that's another question for the group. Have you ever had to explain your product to someone who sort of never tried anything like it? Jen says right now, constantly. Yes, it's really hard. And Sass, I was also thinking of you all the time. the dinners that Adventure Dinner does, it's called Adventure Dinner. It's like supposed to be a different and new experience. So I imagine that's probably sometimes kind of challenging. So yeah, this is hard, right? And so what we did was, but that's what we do. We break down hard questions into a process that leads you to, I wouldn't call them easy answers, but clear answers. So we had to dig into a few questions. What key characteristics make up goat milk's drinkers? So these people out there in the world who already are drinking goat's milk, we knew they were out there. So we had to go find them and see what got them to be in love with goat's milk. How could Oak Knoll position themselves in this increasingly competitive milk marketplace? So, we knew they weren't just going to be competing against the other goats' milks, right? They were going to be competing against cow's milk, plant-based milk, etc. How could we increase the overall appeal of the brand? This is an old brand and it's adorable. It was fine, but definitely needed some modernization. And then we also looked at things, and this is a lens I'll use a lot. So current goat milk drinkers over here, people who might be the most likely buyer who has never tried it over here, and then what's the Venn diagram for those two people? Because ultimately, as a brand like this, you need to attract the currents and the prospects, as we call them. So we have to find something that bridges that gap. So that's what we set out to do. So we began with an analysis of the industry overall. Then we did some surveys and focus groups with both currents and prospects and used what we learned to inform the new logo. So the key research steps here were a survey. And again, we do the same survey to currents and prospects. And this is a technique we use over and over, because really what you learn in the differences between those two groups is where a lot of the insights come from. And we distilled the insights down and then handed it over to Steve for his brilliance in designing the new packaging, which we then tested in the market to do some refining on it. So here's what that looked like. I love this before and after. It's so good. I wish everybody could have seen all the iterations that went into this. But some things to call out. I mean, obviously the design is gorgeous. I love how it's updated. We're all in love with this cute little goat. We talked a lot about that. And it really kind of brings the fun of goats. Goats are kind of fun and funky, and it brings that playfulness here. We learned that people cared about the brand being from Vermont, so we really wove that right into the logo. It's family farmstead. It's bottled on the farm. And so every word that you see on this package was tested in a survey to make sure that it was important. And you see the differences here. People did not care that it's pasteurized. I mean, you have to have that on your bottle, but it can be on the back. And this front of pack real estate is key. And especially if you're in a retail setting, that is the most likely place consumers will see your brand. A lot of people obsess about their website, their social media, but you got to think about your packaging too. And then we have these bursts here at the bottom, easy to digest, bubbled up, because we found that the people who currently drink goat's milk, most of them started drinking it because of a digestion issue and learned quickly that it really helped them digest better. So there you have it. Steve, anything to add there? I feel like this is really your shining
no. I mean, I think what was interesting is that the client, they have been longtime goat dairy experts. So even with expertise in hand, they still learned something that they didn't know. And I think that's the paradigm that as founders or business owners, you walk the walk every day and your boots on the ground, but there's still more to learn. And without asking the key questions, you otherwise just kind of operate on hunches or assumptions, and that can be critical in terms of where you reach for success and how you get there.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I see a question in the Q&A about surveys and how we execute them. I'm going to save that for our actual Q&A time, and happy to dig into that a little bit more. I don't want to get through these case studies for. And anyone can please share your questions. You can hit the Q&A button, or you can just put them right in the chat and we'll capture them for Q&A portion. So the result was overall, we learned that goat's milk has a high appeal for people who are were sort of savvy home cooks. And this was an amazing moment. I think Dave from our team can remember this too, but we often will start out with just a general icebreaker question in a focus group. And for this one, we ask people something like, what did you make for dinner last night? Or like the best thing you cooked in the last week. And these people on this group, they were like, well, I made a Moroccan tagine with pearled couscous. Like they were expert cooks. And then in the currents. So that was something that really united them. And then the prospects they were good cooks, but there was a big difference between the two groups. That was really fascinating. So we incorporated what we found, and the client had a smashing success. So sales are up over 70% from the previous year, which is crazy. The product is turning on the shelf way more quickly than it used to. So they're getting calls for restocks. They had to expand the business like a year earlier than they were planning. Better margins and expansion into more markets across the country. So this was really just an incredible opportunity that they were able to seize on through this type of work. Okay, and that's that. And Steve, I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay, and Becca, will I just give you a go for the next slide?
I'll try to anticipate you, but
Okay.
if not, and then we will want to be at about 15 minutes left for the Q&A. So
Okay, well, I've got my little individual timer here, so I'll try to be spot on with my timing. So what I mentioned before, we love our Venn diagrams, and this is it's a way of getting a little bit deeper into the brand part. And all I'm really trying to demonstrate here, it's just sort of a framework that I use. I call it the brand ecosystem. Just like anything that's going to survive out in the wild, it needs an ecosystem of things around it that help it survive. Brand ideas and brands also need to exist with a lot of supportive ideas around them. So I break it down into these 3 buckets. Pretty simple way to understand it: information about your company, your competition, and your customer. And there are ideas within each of these buckets, like purpose and vision and mission and value propositions. Some of these ideas have titles, right? And that's how we kind of help people negotiate these different growth points, as we analyze these 3 variables within their brand and understand what we need to overcome or change or evolve. So this is the framework that I'll kind of reference visually in my slides. Go ahead. So the first client in the pivot is a company called Uncommon Green, and you can go ahead and go to the next slide. So Uncommon Green was similar to a company called Uncommon Goods. Uncommon Green sold a lot of really unique hand designed. One of the owners of the business was an industrial designer. So he designed a lot of really unique kind of household tchotchkes. Like they weren't really high priced or anything like that. Just a kind of a really unique array of things. Hard to define really, which might have been part of the problem. But Uncommon Green, they called themselves Uncommon Green because the items were unique, and they typically built in sustainable ways of manufacturing these things. What they began to find after about year 4 was that they had kind of plateaued. I mean, sales were okay, but they found that they had one category specifically that continually outperformed all the rest, and that was customized barware, right? So the questions that we had to ask, because what they wanted to do was kind of abandon the current business model that they were in and just focus on, they thought at the moment, customized barware. But that was the bigger question. Like, if we're going to pivot into this sort of customized world, what would that look like? How do we need to evolve as a brand and as a business? What would be our strategy in executing this type of transition? And then the big question was, could our name still serve as the leading edge for how we communicate what we do? You can go to the next slide. So what we did first, just to kind of give them an idea of what their kind of like top level chances of success would be in that market is, and the customization market is huge. Many players at all different pricing stratifications and a lot of different business models within the competitive arena. Some businesses focus on customized items for people that love that Western lifestyle and that Western style of decorating a home. Other customization companies focus on one type of customized thing, maps, and you can have maps as art or maps as glasses or maps as any number of things. So customization as a broad category could be then subdivided into many other types of business models. They wanted to understand which one they were best aligned to insert themselves in and what it would look like to be there. So a lot of questions that we had to answer, and the competitive audit helped us arrive at some decisions on how to move forward. And my question to everyone here, just how well aware are you of the competitive environment that you're in? Meaning, I call it elbow room. Like, how much room do you have around you in terms of what makes you really different? Or conversely, how close is somebody doing something that's similar to what you do? Just a question to ask. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So the other thing that we had to do clearly was just dig into their company, who they were as Uncommon Green. Now, they operated with a wide variety of strengths, and I tend to geek out and create a lot of charts. You might be able to read this when you get the presentation or when you see this, but I broke down a lot of the strengths of customization companies into different categories. How many things do they customize? How many ways do they customize? How many types of products do they customize? So a lot of different categories. And what we did is just kind of measured Uncommon Green in terms of the categories that are really familiar within customization brands. And then once we identified an opportunity in the marketplace, we did an analysis of what would you need to become better at? What would you need to focus on? What would you need to sometimes change? But what would your brand need to be able to deliver? And how well would it need to be able to deliver it in order to capitalize on this opportunity? So here's just where we kind of decided these are the things that you're really going to use to differentiate yourself. So you need to offer these things at this highest level. So that became kind of the strategy of how they were going to enter the market and what they would need to do from a business standpoint, even personnel standpoint, to take advantage of this opportunity. Okay. Then we did some customer research. Now, I rely very heavily on Becca for customer research. In this case, because Uncommon Green already kind of had their foot in the door of customized products, they had done a lot of research, and they're a pretty savvy group of people. So they had done some research, and I think had turned to some outside support to help them do that research. But what we did is I spoke to their customers just to get a sense of, what do you love about Uncommon Green? And we spoke to the retailers and trade partners, asking kind of similar questions, but on the retail side. What we wanted to do was kind of establish a bit of a gut check. All the things that Uncommon Green felt they were good at, that they delivered well, let's verify that that is in fact the starting point that you own and that you're known for, so that we can really confidently build on those things as we move forward. So these interviews were more about just understanding who Common Green was than necessarily focusing on the customers that they serve. Okay, next slide. So when all that was done, when we looked at and gathered all the ideas that we needed to about their company and the competition and their customer, it was determined, yes, in fact, they need a new name. Uncommon Green, unique items built sustainably, just didn't really reflect this new territory that they were going to try to dive into. So the naming process is a whole unique process in and of itself, but where we landed was the name Well Told. And the premise of that was just simply, we want you to be able to live a life well told. And sometimes that can be done by picking up your favorite rocks glass that has the beach where you were married and the date that you did it and the year. So objects that we consider day-to-day objects can still help us identify with our stories and even help tell our stories. So Well Told was the name that we came up with. And the brand idea that encapsulated this kind of new mission and territory was, we create unique, deeply personalized gifts designed to inspire you and tell your story. So that was sort of the fulcrum. That was the thing that we were going to lean heavily on, people being able to tell their story. Okay, next slide.
I love this. Side note, my husband's birthday is coming up. I'm like, I gotta go do
I
some
tell you what,
shopping
they do some really cool stuff.
here.
Okay, so the other part that they wanted us to define was literally help us put together the strategy that we need to execute to really make this happen. Because I think even, we can put these ideas in their head, but they had come from being entrenched in Uncommon Green, and they just felt like we would like you to kind of help grease the skids of our knowledge about what this new business is going to be for us. So here was the hook. Here was the way that we said, well, here's the way to exercise this strategy. Well Told was going to operate in passion platforms. So I can go to their website and say, I'm an athlete. So I want to search all products that might have to do with me as an athlete, my passion. So you can click on athletes. And then the main idea behind what was going to differentiate them is every product was going to need to have, or that was going to be a big differentiation, at least 4 different opportunities to not only customize, but personalize it. So you can choose a pint glass, a pretty standard way to customize your order, but then you can say, I want it etched or screen printed, or a number of different ways to put the design on the glass. And I want it to be a map of the London Marathon route. And then I want to engrave the date that I did that marathon, and I want to engrave my finish time. So now what you've done is you've got this item that is 100% uniquely and distinctly yours. There will never be another glass like this. And that's what Well Told is about, pushing customization and personalization well beyond what most businesses in that category are able to do. Okay, next slide. And then probably one of the most significant types of deliverables of this sort, again, because this was such new territory for them, and they wanted to be able to move fast. They wanted to be able to hire a VP of marketing. They wanted to be able to hire PR. They wanted to be able to hire any number of trade support and industry support, but they wanted an owner's manual. They wanted as many elements of what this new business was going to look like described as they possibly could. So this was a 65-page brand Bible that just, there's the 10 things that we dove into, but it was over 65 pages. So a lot of detail. They just wanted to be able to take this brand Bible, slide it across the table to a new employee and say, read this. This is who we are. This is how we do what we do. This is how we talk about what we do. This is how we photograph what we do. This is how they wanted a full, complete deliverable idea. So that was the culmination of what this project was all about. So what we accomplished with Uncommon Green, well, they were literally within about a 3-month period of time able to conduct this pivot. Sales increased within the first 3 years after this pivot. They were able to double their revenue from where they were as Uncommon Green. They were able to immediately hire a VP of marketing with that ability to kind of transition all the information from the brand initiative that we did right over to that person as real sort of bona fide fact and not just ideas in their heads. And then they immediately hired product design experts to kind of help them continue down that path of creating really unique, customized objects. So 3 sort of real milestone moments for them that helped them conduct that transition.
It's a great story.
Right.
Okay.
Okay, so this one is Revitalized, J.K. Adams, and you can go ahead and write to the next slide. So J.K. Adams is a cutting board company down in Dorset, Vermont. And when I worked with them, they were approaching their 70th year in business.
Wow.
And what they had found is over maybe about the past decade, they had a really great reputation. They had cutting boards that were oftentimes in America's Test Kitchen as ranked like #1 cutting boards. They had a really good presence in the market as being leaders in quality. But what was happening is a lot of other types of materials were coming to the market, like synthetic cutting boards, like those hard plastic. Bamboo was another material coming in. And then just in general, the market just exploded with more entries into the market from overseas and chefs that were coming out with their own line of kitchen products and cutting boards. So ultimately, they just felt like while they had kind of rested on what brought them all their success in that first 70 years, they realized that they were starting to slip. There were other people who were pushing their brands more successfully, and their name wasn't really being carried as far throughout the market as it used to. So yeah, they were really realizing that they were losing their relevance. And so they had to revitalize. They had to figure out how do we go another 70 years and really reassert ourselves back into the marketplace. Okay. So really kind of a similar sort of trackable series of actions on our part. We looked at the competition. Now, with any competitive audit, you're not always going to be out to answer the same exact questions from client to client. Here, what we wanted to do was just get a state of the industry. They were successful, so they had a lot of information about who was out there and what they were doing, but we wanted to get a little bit more granular. Let's figure out who was starting to come up as new market leaders that were new entries into the market, and just start to compare, how does J.K. Adams rank? And again, I kind of geek out with these charts, but let's just start really gathering data that helps us assess how they rank in all these different categories against all these different competitors and everything. So it wasn't so much about, hey, where's the gap that we can kind of land in? It was more, how do we take what we do really well, and if we sort of grow that exponentially and venture into some new areas that fit who we are as a brand, how would we match up? And let's just make sure that when we do this expansion, that we know who's around us and that we do it smart and in ways that we feel we can succeed. And that's always just understanding the competitive environment around you. Okay, next slide. And then we just defined their target markets. Again, they were there, they had a marketing team, so this wasn't too much information to have to dig up on our behalf, but they had these profiles that they had pulled together for us. Okay, next slide. But then what we did is we looked at their company, we conducted interviews, we looked at all their previous brand assets. Essentially what we wanted to do is start to define the ideas that were constant in the J.K. Adams brand that could move forward and be successful as they tried to grow, but then some of the other ideas and values that were going to be critical for them to seize additional opportunities. Okay, next slide. Ultimately, the decision was, as can be a way to kind of amplify these big milestone moments to, a new evolved logo is a great talking point to discuss how you as a business are evolving. So it wasn't a complete revolution in terms of a design. It was more of an evolution that just modernized. But the key idea that got delivered within this identity exploration was just this idea of for your kitchen, home, and life. Because J.K. Adams is so much more than cutting boards. They have a brick and mortar store, they have a wedding registry, they have a really unique and thorough engraving program. So what they didn't realize is that they actually do so much more. They just weren't getting the word out that they're kind of good for any part of your life. And kitchen being so much of where our lives happen, that's a great starting point. But other home decor, and then just things that really speak to you as far as like something for your life that speaks to you and makes you happy. Okay. A few images missing here, but essentially what we did is we just helped them activate this new brand and this new these new talking points across all their digital and analog worlds. We did catalogs and websites and things like that, just fully activated it and helped them activate this new platform for themselves. Okay. The one thing that I want to talk about in terms of sort of like the performance after sort of like a Revitalize initiative. Part of what a Revitalize initiative is corrective, right? So it's not like we rebranded a business that was doing exceptionally well, seeing all this growth, and we just had to sort of give it a new engine to keep on going. What we had to do is actually kind of replace some of the parts of the engine because it wasn't performing that well. So the turnaround after a Revitalize might not always be instantaneous, but it's a play for the long game. But what they did see is they were able to really reach out in some of their trade partners, Williams-Sonoma, Sur La Table, Uncommon Goods, Crate & Barrel, Nora Fleming. They were really able to go out and reach out to these people and have a different kind of conversation than what they had been able to have a year ago. They were able to hit over 4,500 independent retailers, which I think was about 1,100 more than they had previously. And then I actually did a little research and was able to put together that within generally around the 5 years after we did the rebrand, they had seen their sales increase $1.8 million. So, there's always got to be a return for this work, right? And so, yeah, over the long term, they've really been able to turn the business around.
Yeah, that's some good ROI right there.
Yeah. And then I think
Amazing.
that's it. Last slide of mine.
Yeah, that's your last one. Awesome. Wow, those are such good stories. Thank you for sharing those, Steve. Like I said, I just love hearing about this. I'm like, I'm ready to go shopping now. I've been convinced through hearing the stories. Amazing. Well, let's see. We are going to share some info with you just before we go into the Q&A, but now is a great time to kind of digest what you just heard and put your questions into the chat or into the Q&A area, and we'll get started with them. We want to just walk you through a little bit about how we work, since we get a lot of questions about that. So I promise you this is not going to be like a 30-minute pitch session at all, but we're going to share kind of when clients tend to come to Steve and I, either separately or together, and share how we can support you if it makes sense. So what we see is typically a business, we talked about these 4 phases, right? But even within those 4 phases, there are some more specific moments that brands tend to come to us. So, they're going to have a unique stage of growth, unique evolution, and unique challenges for their own business. So a few specific cases where folks have reached out to both of us to enlist support are here. This is what we hear this a lot, these sentences. So I'm working on a product launch, and Jen, you're here on a product launch. Sanchita is talking about a product launch. This is a common one. And personally, I love a launch. We have like a whole system to get your shit together for the launch and make sure it's all streamlined and organized, and also speaking to what your customer wants, and all speaking authentically from your brand. So product launch, content strategy, a lot of times if you feel like your content is falling flat, it's time to take a look at, are you really delivering the truth of your brand through that content? Are there other opportunities? Website redesign, email plans. Maybe you're not just launching a new product, maybe you're launching a whole new collection of items. And how does that fit in? Maybe you're doing a full sort of annual forecast and marketing plan and setting up milestones that you want to hit each quarter. Holiday promotions, Q4 is going to be here before we know it. This is a great time of year to start thinking about your support program for Q4. Maybe you're opening a new brick and mortar location, or maybe you have a restaurant and you're moving locations. Partnership strategy is a great way to grow a business for minimal investment. So what are the other brands or influencers out there that align with my brand and could help me get my message out? We talked about rebrand. This can be like Steve showed, he showed both evolution and revolution. And maybe you have some audacious growth goals for the year and you want to make sure you hit them. So these are the moments that we most commonly hear. And we'd love to hear in the chat if anyone is kind of at one of these moments right now, because that's our jam. And so, Steve, anything to add? Did I miss anything? It's a long list.
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I think, just understand that every day you guys are making decisions based on your brand. Every day you're overcoming problems and keeping your business going by just thinking about who you are as a business, as a brand. A lot of these initiatives oftentimes just come with more questions, and the more questions that you have, or the more significant the initiative that you're trying to traverse, just means that you might need to lean a little bit more into your brand. And that's sometimes where the questions come that you can't quite answer because it's maybe new territory or a new direction. So branding is always there to help guide you. It's just that sometimes you need additional inputs to kind of help get over some of the more significant milestones or inflection points in a brand's trajectory. Yeah,
that's so true. So if this sounds like you, we are available for strategy calls. So what we put together for you all here today is something a little bit different. Usually we offer a kind of a free consultation to see if it makes sense to work together. But for this group gathered here today, we're kind of going to give you a souped up version of that, where instead of half an hour, it's 45 minutes. And what we'll do is listen to your goals and challenges, identify potential areas of support, not that there's any, commitment needed to work together. But what we're also going to do is provide some insights on your strategic ideas and action steps that you can take. So it'll be sort of a mini consult where you actually get some takeaways based on kind of our quick assessment of your business and what steps you can take. And we'll co-create a brief plan with next steps. So we have, Steve, if you want to drop your Calendly link in there, we're agnostic on which one of us you book a call with. If we can both be there, you should say, if you want us both there, you should say that in the little questions you answer when you book your meeting, and we'll try to make that happen. Or you can book separately if one of us, if you need more branding and design, talk to Steve. If you need more data analysis, surveys, and research, you can talk to me. So you will have those links in the chat. And yes, Sanchita, we will send you the links. You should be able to click the link from the chat. Yeah, you can click it, but we will send this in a follow-up email too. So I know personally, anytime anyone drops a link in a chat, if I'm on Zoom, I'm like, it disappeared forever. And I have to go find it. But our link is there. Steve, if you have yours handy, drop it in. Otherwise, we'll send that in the email. And we're giving you a deadline for this special assessment call, which is next Tuesday. So you'll see that as well in the email. We'll make you aware of the deadline. And now we're going to talk through some questions, and I'm just going to pause the share. Oh, no. How do I stop the share? Okay, there we go.
There we go.
Okay, now we're big again. So we got a question from Jen Daniels ahead of time about the new product that she's launching. So I wanted to tackle that. Jen, you were asking about how to just sort of think about the launch. Let me pull up your exact question of your new product, which I thought was such an interesting product. It's a sweetener with maple sugar and CBD that you stir into your oatmeal or porridge for breakfast. And it has some digestion support. Yeah, and thank you. I was hoping you would put some more details. It's sort of like a maple candy, but souped up and more therapeutic. So you were asking about what are some strategies to introduce a new product like this to the market. And so I would say, first of all, start with what you have, right? You have an audience that you and you're collaborating with a friend on this product, right? So you both have audiences. And with any new product, there's going to be, remember before I talked about currents and prospects. So in your current audience, there are going to be people who are like oatmeal fanatics eating this every day. You want to find some of those people and try to talk to them and see, what they say, what's their reaction to this product. And that can get you a great start on how to position it. Maybe you want to send out a few samples ahead of time to these people. And, sometimes I know in this day and age, like I don't really answer a phone call unless it's my mother calling. So talking to real people can be intimidating. That's why we have jobs at Uppercase. We really help with that, and we'll just do it for you. But it's really worth doing it. And I think it's helpful, to set yourself a time container. Like this week, I am finding out what people think about this product. And so, on your package currently that you sent to me, you have digestion support loud and proud, which I think is probably a great theory, but you've got to test that theory. So do people care that this maple melt helps you digest your breakfast? Or do they just care that it tastes really good? Or do they feel kind of nice and relaxed because it has CBD in it? You don't know necessarily what they're going to love about it. And so just getting out there and getting some feedback is the best way to get started. Then once you go from there, it's all about planning. So when you're introducing a new kind of product to a market, you want to just get your communications calendar in order and be talking about that thing every day for a month. And that's how you get that out into the world in a very simplistic explanation. Steve, anything to add to that question?
Yeah, you know, in terms of the actual execution of a launch, that's not really a territory that that's not a domain that I'm in frequently. I might have opportunities to witness how it does in fact roll out. But usually there's just a lot of background work and everything that's gone in to help sort of generate that plan. I just find it fun to watch it and just like to see how the things that we thought we were building into the brand, how well they really executed, and are we getting the responses that they want. But no, I feel like you nailed it pretty good, Becca.
Great, cool. Oh, and I just opened my email to see this from Jen, and I see that a couple of you are booking calls. So, hey, way to go. Also, like, don't sleep on that because the calendar is going to get filled up. uh, this is me trying to like do internet marketing awkwardly. Great. Okay, so that was an awesome question. We had a couple of questions about survey specifics, and I'll answer that. And Steve, then I thought maybe you could weigh in on the PEM session that we just did, because I thought that was such an interesting survey experience. So someone asked, can you share a little bit about surveys? Where do you execute them and how many people do you survey? So we use Momentive, which is also known as SurveyMonkey, and we love that. The other great tool to use is Qualtrics. And so the surveys are, I also like Typeform, that's a good one too. But they're easy for the consumer to fill in. What we, again, I feel like this workshop could have been called Currents and Prospects because I'm talking about this so much, but we usually break our survey respondents into two groups, currents and prospects. So we'll start with a client's existing email list. Sometimes like in the wild goods study, the brand wasn't launched yet. So then we go out and buy responses. You can buy, panelist responses. And if you do have budget for that, I would say it's definitely worth exploring. People think like, oh, people are just going to like not pay attention and just pick, sort of randomly respond, and you don't get good data. You do get really good data because if you set up your survey right, and you kind of have to include questions that guide them through what they're really thinking kind of in the back of their heads versus like, age, income, gender, blah, blah, blah. You got to go deeper than that. And then the number of people we survey depends on the population size. So that's like a statistical analysis, but so for each project, it's a unique number, but it typically ends up being somewhere between 500 and 1,200 responses that you need to get for any given project. I think sometimes we've gotten lots more just because somebody had a really big email list, but that will usually cover it. And then Sanchita also asked about what kind of surveys we do, and we do all kinds of surveys from product packaging surveys to audience surveys to brand level surveys, customer satisfaction. Really, if you can put it in a question, we'll do it. And Steve, I know you don't do a lot of surveys, but we were at kind of a hybrid focus group survey session together a couple weeks ago. And I just wanted you to share maybe a little bit about what you took away from that as a branding expert and how it fits in.
Yeah, sure. So this was considered a PEM survey, and Becky, you can correct me here, but the difference between this type of survey, PEM, versus the type of survey.
I don't know that either of us knows what PEM stands for. We were
Yeah,
not
it's a great word
in
to
charge of
say.
doing
It just makes us look really smart. PEM survey is that just like the surveys that Becca puts together, it takes somebody who really knows how to drive that bus to really get the most out of that survey. We had a gentleman who specializes in PEM surveys. And the difference is a PEM survey, it's not about asking a lot of questions that you continue to ask further questions about. He would have a question, but then he would just let the group of people talk. And if somebody said something, he wouldn't step in and ask, well, can you explain that further? And what he's trying to do is he's trying to just let this group of people tell us what's important to them without any attachments to, if he started to pick on somebody's response about something, they might spend the next 15 minutes talking about that very issue. It doesn't mean that that issue was important. It means that the survey monitor decided to talk about it for 15 minutes. But so what he does is he doesn't interfere with the respondents in any way, so that everything that we hear is authentically derived by what's important to them. Whereas I guess maybe I'll call it a traditional survey is you do have a list of questions, and it's I don't know, maybe you might need to
Yeah.
contrast a little bit
A
more.
lot of times
That's
there's
what's unique about the pen surveys,
yeah.
that it's just allowing people to talk and overhearing them.
Right, and getting out of the way. I think what you're describing is a lot of times you'll see leading answers in surveys. That's sort of the term that you use.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
you have to set up ways for really just to get yourself out of the way. So that's why you'll see a lot of times the surveys we do, we start with an open-ended question and we word it super carefully. And we just let the people talk because people want to share their opinion with you. And if you give them space to do that, they really will tell you what's on their mind. So it's important
There
to.
was one statement, getting back to the comment I made before about in this PEM survey, we had some packaging samples that they were commenting on, and there was one favorite of the clients and even mine that we thought they would love. And one of the comments regarding that packaging was, this looks like the most expensive, it was a food product, I won't say what it was. This looks like the most expensive version of that product that I could buy at a gas station. So they
Was my favorite.
so they literally thought very low of it. Like, and I don't know that you would get that kind of untarnished honesty if, if you were, I don't know, more involved in the survey. So people just really let loose, and just.
Yeah, and it's funny that I didn't actually see that as such a dig because sometimes I'm like starving and I have to get gas and I need something from the gas station.
True.
But it was also like just so specific to a place that he would expect to see that product
Right.
make
Yeah.
sense. And it was not the place that we were going for. So it was
Yeah.
just like, okay, we're going to go in a different direction. It was super clear and
Yeah.
great feedback. So
Mhm.
anyway, all right. I think that covers all the questions. We're 3 minutes over. So thanks to everybody for sticking with us who was able to. And we will, like I said, send out the recording. Thank you to Steve, my co-host. It's always a pleasure to collaborate with you. And I look forward to
Thank you,
doing
Becca.
much more in the future. And so we will wrap up there. And we're, within reason at your disposal. Send an email anytime and book your calls, and we will keep in touch. And we're really rooting for you all and hope that you achieve the growth and results that you are going for out there. So have a great rest of your day, and I'll end there.